Moments ago, David Eby, Minister responsible for housing, introduced legislation that will make life better for renters and rental housing providers. The changes are much needed, and they came about because of advocacy from renters and rental housing providers, and because they were recommended by the Rental Housing Task Force, which I chaired. I want to thank Premier Horgan for asking me to chair the Rental Housing Task Force, Minister Selina Robinson, who had been the Minister for Housing at the time when I started the work, Minister Eby for listening to the voices of renters and rental housing providers, and of course my other panelists on the task force, MLA Olson and MLA Leonard, for their work on this. So we did a full review of the rental legislation in BC. We talked to landlords, we talked to renters, we talked to advocates, lawyers, we looked at other systems around the world to try and find a good package that would balance the needs of all parties to have a more secure, a more successful environment for people to live. Better homes, better housing, a better relationship between landlords and renters. While we did that work, we heard many stories from people, stories I was familiar with as the MLA for the West End. Stories about renovictions, where people would be given an eviction notice, told they had to leave because there were massive renovations coming, only to find out when they looked at the real work that was being suggested, it was just a coat of paint or just some tiles in the bathroom or in the kitchen. Work that could have been done with keeping people in their homes, work that never should have led to eviction notices and that fear of eviction, or real evictions, because many people don't fight these kinds of things or they don't know their rights and they end up losing their housing. We heard about stories of massive rent hikes, we heard about bullying, we heard about the need for change for all sides. We know that a lot of this was driven because people want to push a long-term tenant out so that they can jack up the rent and make more money. Most landlords don't do it. Landlords told us too they wanted this practice to end because it gave them a bad name. They didn't like having to work alongside folks who were just trying to kick people out so they could jack up the rent and make some more profit. Our government promised to take action to deal with these rent evictions, to deal with the massive rent hikes, and we've come a long way. We've closed the fixed term lease loophole. Folks will remember that until we became government, you could be given a one-year lease and either face eviction or face a 50%, a 75% rent hike. We stopped that. The geographic area rent increase clause as well. Folks in my neighborhood were facing 73% rent increases under that clause. We got rid of it. We helped turn 18,000 empty condos into homes so people could have a place to live through the use of the speculation tax. A personal victory, we established the Compliance and Enforcement Unit. Up until this unit was created, there was no force to actually investigate legitimate complaints of breaking the law again and again and again, and there was no way to hit people with real penalties to stop them from doing these kinds of behaviors. We changed that, and in fact, the Compliance and Enforcement Unit has done such a good job. I know many, many people are now happily housed in their homes instead of facing that kind of threat of eviction, because when there's a repercussion, people follow the law. We also cut annual rent increases in half. Under the former rules, you used to be able to face 2% plus inflation. Highest rent increase in the last decade, I think, was 4.3%. We cut that in half, and now we froze it when the pandemic hit. And so with these changes, I think life will get better for renters and rental housing providers, and I want to tell you what's in the bill. So as I mentioned, we're fulfilling our promise to extend the rent freeze till the end of 2021. That means that British Columbians will know that their rent cannot go up this year. This makes life more affordable, and this makes it so that people can plan ahead. Moving beyond 2021, we've also made sure to change the law so that rent can only go up at the rate of inflation, no longer inflation plus in the sense that it used to go up in. We know how difficult the rental housing market can be and how challenging it can be to find a place. That's why we want to make sure people can stay in their homes. So what we're doing is we're strengthening the law to stop rent evictions. This was our #1 recommendation as a task force. This is an important piece which will keep people in their homes so that they don't have to face a eviction notice for a phony renovation. No longer will people be getting eviction notices for renovations that don't exist, for fake renovations, in a sense. Whereas previously the landlord could just write up a piece of paper and slap it on the door and say, you're evicted because I want to do some renos, which may or may not exist. Now they're going to actually have to apply to the branch to show them the work that they need to do. We want landlords to invest in their buildings to maintain them. We want the life safety systems to be maintained. We want buildings to last for a long, long time into the future as good homes to be in. We also want people to have that security, and so that's where we've found the balance. They can make an application for that kind of extensive renovation that has to be done, but we believe, and we've seen it, that most renovations can occur while people still live in their homes. Anyone who's lived through a leaky condo knows that, and know that you can live, and many people do. Most landlords, actually, I've talked to as well, make sure that their tenants can stay because they want good quality tenants in their homes. If passed, these changes will come into effect July 1st, 2021. There are some other changes, things like expanding the penalties the Compliance and Enforcement Unit can use. So if somebody was committing fraud, trying to lie to the enforcement team about what they were doing, whether it be a landlord or a tenant, they can actually be penalized for that. We're also clarifying the law around manufactured home parks. Right now, park rules can be changed so frequently, nobody knows what the rules are, and so it's really difficult to either follow them or face enforcement action from the manufactured home park if you aren't following them. You don't know what the rules are, you can't follow them. So we're going to clarify some of those changes as well. For too long, we believe that renters and rental housing providers weren't listened to. They dealt with massive rent increases, unfair rules, no enforcement, and a real lack of fairness. We know renters are struggling, but we know that these changes will make a real difference. I'm always looking for ways to improve life for people in British Columbia, so I know down the road I'm sure there'll be more ideas and suggestions of other changes that need to happen, and I'll of course continue to advocate for them. Changing the rent freeze, freezing it till the end of 2021, capping rent increases to the rate of inflation moving forward, stopping illegal renovictions. These are all things that renters have called for a long time, and I'm so glad that with these legislative changes we'll be able to answer that call.